Right, so in this lesson, we're going to be going over the back view of the skeleton. It's important to first get like a big view of the skeleton, which is why I'm doing it this way. We'll get the front view, the back view, a side view, and then three-quarter views, most likely both three-quarter views from the front and then the back three-quarter view. Having this information of the skeleton, and then when we start putting the muscles on, we'll just help better see how the muscles relate to the skeletal bones and how the whole figure works as a whole. And then we'll start zooming in on individual muscles or individual parts when I'm showing like, hey, this is where the muscle attaches to the bone. We'll draw a bigger version zoomed in, just focusing on that or looking down upon the character. It might be important to see it more zoomed in. We'll deal with the skull separately, the hands separately, and the feet separately. It all zoomed in as if they're their own figure. So anyway, I just want to let you know that we are going to get more magnified as we move on. But for now, we're just sticking with a more zoomed out view as we draw. Right, so with the back view, everything kind of stays the same. So let's kind of just come in here. Obviously, everything stays the same height and everything. There's not a whole lot more to learn when it comes to the back view versus the front view. It's the side view that you're really going to have to learn more of. Just make sure that as we're drawing this, everything stays the same proportion. The spinal cord will go up in there, or rather the spine. The spinal cord actually goes inside the spine. Right, so the vertebrae or the spine will go up in there. Let's just draw a straight line going down to about the line it's going to end at here, like so. Now what's important about the back view that's going to really be different than the front view, of course, is going to be the scapula that we'll see. But first I just want to kind of mark in the general idea where the top rib bones are going to form here. We're not going to be drawing each individual rib here, but we are going to just kind of sketch in the mass of the rib cage. You notice here will be the bottom of the rib cage. You want to make sure you keep that consistent. And of course, this is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to keep in mind that from the back, the rib cage kind of goes up like this, not quite as much as the front view though. Just kind of comes up a little bit like that. So we're just going to kind of draw the shape like this. It's important that when you draw the back view to also draw it from your mind without any of this and help. So you'd go through the same kind of measurements that you went through with the front view. The pelvic bone area being the center mass and the top and bottom line. So basically, the exact same thing we did in the first lesson for the front view, you can do the same thing for the back view. And then as you do it, you're following, instead of following the measurements here like I am, you'd actually just redo all the measurements again. I'm just trying to save time and not do that. Right, so it's kind of important to know where the scapula starts at, and it's pretty close to the spine. So you want to start it right about here. And as far as how tall the scapula is, the scapula goes up to about the top of the rib cage, and it goes down. I'm gonna actually zoom in as we're drawing some of this stuff here, so I can get better line work. Kind of has this curve to it. This is the general shape. We'll get into more detail about certain important bones like the scapula, though. And you don't want it to be too long, so it goes down about here. So maybe not. Well, looks like it is quite like halfway down. It extends out. It has a shape that kind of comes up like this. And it extends out here beyond the rib cage. So just remember that it goes beyond the rib cage from the back side. As you can see here, this is the part from the front side. That scapula continues going over here on the other side of that arm. Or well, it kind of matches up right about here with it. Just keep in mind it comes off the rib cage, as you can see here. You have that space. As it extends out further than the rib cage. Now, what's important about the scapula is part of the scapula wraps around the front of the body here. That is, there's going to be a part of the scapula that's going to overlap this part. So I'm just going to loosely draw this line in here so you can see the part that overlaps. There's this part right here that attaches to the scapula and it comes off like so. And it's about the same. And here, I just want to readjust this a little bit. That shouldn't be so. It comes out just a little bit past and then kind of comes up at an angle like so. Now this part comes, don't go too high, which is what I kind of just did there. Make sure it kind of come up and then kind of start coming out more straight, like so. It extends out further, that top part extends out further and almost as far as this arm. It kind of comes out here. I didn't really draw this from the front view. It kind of comes out like this. Now there's a gap between the, hold on a second. I'm trying to fix this. All right, sorry about that. So there's a gap between the, oh my God, I forgot the name of the bone. See this, I just never memorized the names of bones. The humerus, sorry. Well, I had humerus in my mind, but then I was thinking femur, but the femur is the leg bone. Anyway, so you have the humerus here, this bone here that's going to come down, right? There's a gap between the top of the humerus and this part of the scapula that hangs over. And there's a little indent on the under part of the scapula that allows some cartilage and ligaments and stuff, a bunch of tissues, and that fills up the gap between the two bones. But without all the ligaments and stuff, if you just have the skeleton itself, there's a gap between the top of the humerus bone and the scapula there. And that's where it rotates inside, but without the space is filled in with different tissues. So just keep that in mind when you're drawing the skeleton. This part right here of the scapula has a little, let's go ahead and zoom in, has a little indent to it, and that's where the humerus also fits into. And so if we're going to draw this part of the humerus bone, kind of goes like this. The bigger part there that fits into the socket. Right? So keep in mind that this part comes out over, and it only comes out to about here. So I'm going to go ahead and shorten that just a little bit. It's not very thick at all. It's easy to draw things thicker when you're zoomed in like this, so gotta make sure I keep everything thin. And there's a bunch of tissue between that gap there. And that tissue is what holds all together and it makes a socket for your arm. That is for your humerus bone. Add a little bit of detail there. This continues to come and then it comes up like, has a shape kind of like this here. I'm going to try to clean up as I'm drawing. This slightly comes down like this. And so this part is attached to the scapula. It's part of the scapula and it attaches to. So it's like this is overlapping that. So if light was coming down here, right? So if we had a light source like this would cast a shadow like that, right? Because it's overlapping it. It's coming in front of it. We'll draw it from another angle just in case that's not clear as well. This right here has like a ridge or a spine that kind of comes off like this. So there's another shadow showing that there's like a ridge or spine there. And then this kind of wraps around and twists forward. And again, we will draw this from a different angle too, so you can see how that works. And that's where you have your, remember from the front view, you have your sternum and everything, and where it attaches to. So where it attaches to that front, it comes out at kind of a angle. I don't want to get too much of an angle. And it'd be easier if I actually turn my Cintiq thing. If I can draw this a little bit better. Right, so that's how that works. Okay, now this is kind of a complicated thing to memorize. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video at this time, or even just shut off completely if you want to, and practice just this here, what we have. You already know all this right here because we've done it from the front view basically. And one thing you can notice that I did because I was zoomed in, and like I said, it's really easy to do this. I try not to zoom in when I draw until I have at least the basics laid out. So I should draw the basic sizes first before I zoom in. Just kind of, that's the basic shape there, and I'll come in and refine that shape, but it's good to have the basic shape there first. That way I don't make things too big when I zoom in. But what you want to do is memorize the scapula and where the collarbone attaches to the scapula. And in case I haven't said the medical name before, the collarbone is called the clavicle. So draw where the clavicle attaches to the scapula and memorize the shape of the scapula from this side only so far, from the left side. When you draw it from the right side, imagine you're relearning something, you're drawing a completely different object, a completely different shape. Don't just try to translate in your brain and flip everything over, because it can be weird, and you want it to just become natural when you're drawing either side. And so if you treat the right side as a separate object and don't have the left side to look at, in fact, if you're using Photoshop, what you should do is make a new layer, or whatever program you're using, make a new layer, and you should block this out completely. Oops, that's not the right brush. Let's see, this one? Yeah. Block this out completely so you can't see it. If you're drawing on paper, just grab another piece of paper and put the paper over this like at an angle so it covers that part, and then draw this without looking at anything. It's important to do that because you want to be able to draw the right side and left side from your memory without any reference to anything else. And it will help you. Just trust me. It helps you draw from your imagination that much easier, especially when you get into certain type of complex poses and stuff like that. So trust me and just do it. So at this point, that's what I want you to do is memorize drawing the scapula. I shouldn't have to keep repeating, hopefully, how to do that. So it's one of my great secrets and methods of learning is what you want to do, like I said before, is follow along with the video and make sure you're always following along and drawing with me. So whether it's a piece of paper and pencil you have and a book you're drawing on or something else that you're drawing on, make sure you draw along with me. Even if you're, have the video up on one monitor and you're drawing on another monitor with, with your computer, please draw along with the video. If you're not drawing along while watching the video, you're wasting your time. Watching the video is not going to help you one bit. Well, I can't say it won't help you one bit at all. It might help a little bit, but you're not going to get the benefits that I promise you if you just watch the videos. You have to draw along while you're watching the videos. Not only do you have to draw along while you're watching the videos, you have to do the exercises and you have to do them and do them and do them, or you're not going to get better. Just like playing the piano. If you want to get better at the piano, you can't just watch a tutorial on someone teaching you how to play a song. You have to play along with them. You have to hit the keys and do the motions that he's doing. And then you have to continue doing the exercises that he tells you to do to get that song down, or you're never going to get better at the piano. So watching my videos might be entertaining, I'm not sure, but it's not going to help you if you don't actually follow along and draw with them. I know I just rammed that into your head many times, but it's so important, that's why I did that. Right, so what you do then is after you have followed along and you drew this along with me, next I want you to go ahead and draw it just from reference. So draw it from either pause the video, and draw it from that right there, from what you can see. And here I can even zoom in for you if you want. So you can pause here and draw it from reference, or get a reference online or something like that if you want to get a medical reference of something. And draw the scapula several times from reference, at least 5 times. The minimum is 5 times. After you've drawn the scapula 5 times from reference, then don't look at anything at all. Wait a little while. Wait at least 5 minutes, and then draw it from memory. Do the best you can from memory, and then compare your drawing to a reference and go, okay, this is where I made some mistakes. This is where I went wrong. If you get completely stuck when trying to draw from your memory, you just absolutely cannot think of what it looked like I just don't know what to draw, then go ahead and go back to the reference and draw it again from reference. Wait a little while, draw it from memory. You keep going back and forth like that until you're comfortable drawing it from memory. Then that means you've pretty much mastered that shape, that object. In this case, you've invented this in your mind, and your mind now has the information in it where you can draw that shape in your mind. This is such an important bone that you really want to memorize it. This is one of the bones that you want to memorize in this way. You can be more lazy with other bones, but this bone is one of the ones you really want to memorize. So I know I just repeated that, but it's so important. So memorize that bone. All right. Hopefully you did the exercises, you paused the video, and you did your thing. The next we're going to do, and I'm going to take my own advice here, is we're going to draw. I'm actually going to right click on this layer, layer properties. I'm going to choose gray so that I know this is my drawing layer. This is the layer I'm sketching on. And I guess this is a little bit more fancy than a sketch, but I'm gonna loosely kind of draw on the shape size here. I'm gonna kind of zoom out here so I can loosely get the size of the shape, and I'm gonna just draw lightly. That comes a little bit off, like so. Kind of comes around over here, and then you have I know I have this part that comes up and away from the scapula. It's still part of the scapula, so but I know it comes further away than this part here, like that. Flip my pin around. I can use the eraser, just kind of clean it up a little bit. I know the humerus doesn't fit right around here, and it's going to come down to about here. I don't want it to get too big with it. And it's thin and big at the ends. So I'm just kind of sketching on the basic shape of that for right now. So I know the scapula's going to come out to about here. It's going to come, it's going to have this part here that has a ridge, like so. I'm going to have to zoom in for that part. And then the part of the clavicle that will come around. Now I can zoom in, since I have the basic shape there. I can now zoom in and we get everything here to work right. To shade like this, I just very lightly touch my tablet. It takes practice, just like it does with a pencil or with a Bic pen. Believe me, you can shade pretty lightly with a Bic pen. You just have to practice. Whatever medium you're using, you have to practice with a lot. And if you can't shade like this with a pencil yet, don't be able to expect to just come in and shade like that with a tablet, like a Wacom tablet of some sort, or Wacom if that's how it's pronounced. Now there's some debate on exactly how it's pronounced. I'm pretty sure it's Wacom, because I think I heard one of the actual representatives from Wacom, and I think they said Wacom. I think that's how they pronounced it. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading to show that this part of the scapula comes in front of this part here. It extends out and pushes away from it, so it's farther out. And again, when we draw it from another angle, like from this side angle here, we'll be able to see that. Right, so there we have it. We have the scapula from the other side. So now what I want you to do is compare it to the other scapula and go, okay, so I have two scapulas here. Now, one thing I did is I forgot to actually change this, and this was my fault. I just forgot to change it to make it a little bit more round. They're not totally both the same, and they kind of should be, but if I had both of them there, then I can kind of, and notice this is one thing I did do wrong. I forgot to, when I was doing the basic measurement, I forgot to come in with the shape of the scapula here. And sorry about that, that was my fault. So even though, I've been drawing for a long time and following my own methods for a long time, even I still make mistakes once in a while. Okay, now we want to go ahead and take and wrap this around. So, you make sure they're both matching. Again, when you're drawing something that's important, you're going to make sure that you match up both your things, make sure they look the same. You're not going to cover part of it up, but for this exercise, you want to cover it up and then match them up and go, okay, yeah, I've matched them up pretty good. And then if you haven't matched them up too good, then go ahead and erase some parts and match them up. Right, so now for your next exercise, what you're going to want to do is draw this. Hopefully, you drew this along with me and you have something like this on paper right now. Maybe I drew it a little too fast, so go ahead and pause the video and work at your own speed. You don't have to work at my speed. I'm trying to go at a decent speed so that hopefully everyone's accommodated. I don't want to go too fast. I don't want to go too slow either, because then people that are more fast drawers, so I'm trying to make an equal balance to try to keep everyone happy. Anyway, so go ahead and draw this from, obviously you already drew it along with me, so you have one drawing of this already. Now I want you to go ahead and draw it a few more times for reference, whether it be a medical book or wherever you find the image, or if you want to just use, what we have here. It might be better to kind of use a reference, like a medical reference of some sort, not a drawing. If you can, like either a really good three-dimensional representation of it or a photograph of an actual scapula or a video pausing of an actual scapula. The reason why is because you're just going to see more details of it that way. Anyway, so I don't want to talk too long here. So go ahead and draw like at least 5 times from reference. After you've done that, like I said, you should know the drill by now. Then you draw it from memory, do the best you can, go back and forth until you feel comfortable drawing it from your memory and you feel like you've kind of mastered the shape. Now, wait a few days, maybe even wait a week. Keep practicing drawing it. Don't just, if you feel like, oh, I mastered it, woohoo, I just drew it from my mind and I've mastered the shape, I'm good to go. Don't think it's going to stay in your mind. See, what still has to happen, that's your short-term memory. Your brain still has to transfer that information into your long-term memory. So what you want to do is wait, keep practicing it, don't stop, draw these shapes you master for the next few days. So however many shapes you decide to take on, just keep in mind you have to keep drawing that amount of shapes for the next few days in order for it to transfer to long-term memory. And then go ahead and wait a week and then see if you can still draw it from your memory. Then you know it's transferred to your long-term memory. Then to make sure it stays there, you have to practice, every now and again and draw from your memory all these shapes. Okay. So now we have all this so far down. So we got our basic skull shape. We haven't actually gone into the skull shape yet. We will, but we just haven't done that yet. What I can do actually very quickly is let's go ahead and just kind of get into some basic skull shape here. So it's kind of shaped like this. You don't have to memorize this yet. I just want to kind of show you how it's going to look. Because when we get into the skull, then you'll have exercises and things. If you want to go ahead and draw with me, you can. Some people's skulls kind of get wider. So if you wanted to draw the skull a little bit wider, you can. Every skull is a little different. So I'm going to make it a little bit wider like that. What I'm trying to do is not lift I'm trying to keep I'm going to talk about as if I'm keeping my pencil on the canvas. Really, I'm keeping it on the Cintiq. But what I do is I try not to lift it. I try to keep it on the Cintiq. And what that does for me, and I think it will for you too, is help you draw smoother lines. It's a really neat technique where you try to draw without ever lifting your pencil. So if you need to move from one place to the other, you just lightly go from one place to the other. There is this kind of this is where your skull grows. And I think they're important marks to map those little lines right there. Your ears are going to fit in, just so you know, even though we haven't gotten to the tissues yet, your ears are going to fit in right about there. Next, you're going to see part of the front of the jaw, which is why I have that basic shape there. I'm just going to keep it as that basic shape. Then you have your vertebrae. We're not going to get into drawing individual vertebrae. There's really no point. Maybe I'll draw like a couple of them just so you can learn the shape, but there's really no point. It's not going to be all that important. Just know that from the side view, when we get into it, your vertebrae kind of stick out a little bit. And that's why sometimes you can see those bumps in the back. So we'll go through the important parts, but I don't think we have to draw every single rib and vertebrae. It's really not super important to figure drawing. All right, so you don't have to do the exercises of memorizing that shape right now. We'll get into this skull as a separate thing. Right, so the next thing I want to memorize is I think the next best thing to memorize will be the hip bone from the backside. And the reason why is because the hip bone is so important. So the first thing is we know the bottom of the hip bone, right? If you want to do the same measurements you did before, you know that you have the kind of gap you have, and you kind of draw the basic shape of a hip in there. And this just shows that you know this is about how much room I have to work with. And then we'll start putting the details into that area. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Start erasing some of this. If I can start adding my details. From the back side, the hips look a little bit different, or the pelvis bones look a little different. First thing is you have this part here. Let's go ahead and draw it. And this is where the vertebrae is attached to, the spine's attaching to. Right, so this is called your sacrum. That's what we're going to draw right now. Right, and it's where your coccyx attaches to. That's kind of a hard word for me to say for some reason. I'm going to just kind of draw the general shape of the sacrum. Kind of comes down like this. And we just kind of round it off. Then you have the coccyx that attaches right here. also called the tailbone. This is the part that hurts like a son of a bitch if you like fall and hit it on your, like do like a front handspring and hit wrong and land right on that. Oh, it's such a sharp pain. It hurts so bad. Yes, I've done that a few times when I was practicing different martial arts stuff. Right, so that's the basic shape of it. It has 4 holes within it. Now I didn't draw this from the front view because it's kind of harder to see from the front view. You don't see much of it from the front view. Then you have your pelvic bones. And it has this pelvic crest. You have this crest also in the front. And you can see it by how it kind of has a thickness like this. And it rolls around to the front side. And then, just like when we drew it from the front view, it kind of comes like this. It comes down here. And there's actually a part of the pelvic bone where I'm going to clean this up, where your femur attaches to. I almost call it the humerus. That's the arm bone up here. Dang it. This goes around to the front. Right, like this, and there's this little part right here that kind of comes out in front, like that, and this part comes up like this. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. Anyway, there's a part right here on the pelvic bone that, from the side view, you can kind of see there's a notch in there that allows the part of the humerus bone, or excuse me, part of the femur bone, to fit in that socket. And then I'm actually going to zoom out to draw that to make sure that you don't want to go out too much farther than the actual hip bone. So about here, and just kind of draw the basic shape. Now I know it kind of comes out here and connects, and then this is going to come down to here. I just want to make sure that I have that in there. Now we're not going to actually, I'm going to stop drawing here for a second because you have to do the next exercise. So the next exercise then for now is to do, obviously you drew along with me. Now I just want you to go ahead and redraw the basic shape of the hips, the pelvic bones from the back. Go ahead and draw the sacrum and the coccyx. Draw the pelvic bone as attached there. You can kind of sketch in the basic marks, the marks for where the femur is going to go if you want to. That's fine. And then do this from reference a few times. Now actually I'm going to go ahead and I was just drawing through the object to show that the femur goes into that socket. But let's go ahead and add a little bit darker line so this is more visible. I should probably add a little bit of shading here. You can kind of see that this kind of turns around more. Right, so you should know the drill by now. You want to go ahead and draw this several times, 5 times or so, and then draw it from memory, and then go back and draw it from reference again, and check and verify that it does match up. And hold on a second. Well, actually, you know what? Instead of redrawing it, I'm just going to take this here. I don't want to draw this incorrectly, and this should be, I think this should be up a little bit higher. Well, I know it should be up a little higher because I know that I'm supposed to draw this line that comes off here for the front of the hip, and I wasn't able to do that because I didn't draw it high enough. Make sure you add the holes. There's also little dents too, so if you want to add those. Right, so keep going back and forth from reference and from memory until you can draw this shape here from your mind. Now it doesn't have to, if you just want to memorize it more simplicity, you don't want to get into this much detail. The main shape you want to memorize then is that it kind of has this shape here. This is the main shape. It's almost like some kind of weird ear or something. That's the main shape you want to memorize. So if you want to simplify it, you can, because I don't think the whole shape of this bone is as important to memorize. But you definitely want to at least memorize the basic shape of it. So draw that until you have it from memory and it feels good. Then go ahead and move on in the lesson. And next you can do the same thing you did last time for the bone, is you can cover this with a piece of paper or make a new layer like that, and then cover it and then draw the other side if you want to. Actually, I recommend to do that. And then we'll go ahead and draw the other side here really quick. And it looks the same, but it's flipped around. And there's something about it being flipped around. You might think, well, what's the point of learning it from both directions? If I've mastered it from the left side, then why do I need to also master it from the right side? You'll be surprised. In fact, here, for a test, if I can show you how important this is. If you've already done the exercises, you've mastered the shape, right? You got it mastered, but you haven't done this part yet, so you haven't got there yet. So you got the shape mastered. Now go ahead and pause the video, look at no references whatsoever, not even a drawing of this from the left side, a blank piece of paper, no references in front of you. Try to draw that same shape, but this time draw it from the right side. Watch how difficult it is to draw. Even if you can kind of go, okay, when I draw it from the left side, you're going to find yourself going like this, going, okay, when I get down here, what? You're gonna think back to this side. You're gonna go, oh yeah, okay. So it kind of goes like that, kind of like an ear, and you're gonna find yourself doing that. So that's why it's important to memorize from both views. It just makes drawing the figure that much easier from your imagination. Right, let's go ahead and clean that up a little bit. And I want to make sure I get high enough here with this shape. And I think one of the easiest ways to kind of memorize this shape is to kind of memorize it is kind of like an ear, because it sort of is, right? It sort of looks like an ear. Right, and then we have the little part of the front. We can see a little part of the front there that comes around like this. And I'm just trying to draw cleanly here for you guys. Next, I'm going to zoom out so I can kind of draw the basic sketch of that shape there. And like so. Right, so now we have drawn the same shape again. I'm going to just kind of clean this up a little bit. Try to make it match to the side a little more. I wasn't actually looking at that side until just now, so now I see that doesn't totally match, but it's close enough. Right, so now you already have all this memorized, and hopefully you have both sides memorized. And if you haven't done that, then you need to go back and do that because it's really important. So go back and now try to draw this from your memory. Let's say you started with the right side, then try to draw the left side. Whatever side you have memorized easy, go back to the side you don't have memorized easy and do the same exercises until you have that side memorized as well. One thing you can see here that I did indeed mess up on is the bottom here and the top doesn't match. So what happens, I actually went too far down and I drew all this too big. So to fix that, if you've noticed that you kind of made that same mistake, then you can just kind of take this whole thing and just kind of reshape it. I'm going to get it to where it's pretty darn close. Not going to make it absolutely perfect, but there we go. That's pretty darn close. And then I might go ahead and redraw these bottom parts really quick so they're not as big there. They should only come down to here. Oops. The kind of dip here. Should be a dip there. Little things like that, like if you don't draw on a regular basis, it kind of leaves your memory, but that's fine because I really don't think this part is all that important to memorize. All these little details here, like that little dip and stuff, isn't all that important to memorize. Okay, so now we got it. All right, so now you've got both sides memorized. You're good to go. We're ready to move on to the next bone. Next, we're going to move on to, we'll go to the humerus bone here from the back side. So it pretty much has the same shape as it does from the front side, but we're going to see where this bone attaches to the back, and that's going to be the difference. I was trying to think of a trick that might help memorize. Remember, this is the radius, this is the ulna. The radius is on the side with the thumb, and the radius is the one with the S curve. I was trying to think if there's a way to kind of memorize that. Yeah, I can't think of any little trick right now, but if you think of one, you might want to use it, and it'll just help you memorize which is what. But I don't think it's not important. The names aren't all that important, but it is important to know that the S curve bone, the bone that goes like this is on the side with the thumb, and the more straight bone is on the opposite side of that. That part's important to memorize only because it will make a difference when you're drawing like the arm twisting over and what bone twists over the other bone, and knowing what side is properly on the right side will let you know how to twist that bone. And it'll also help you understand the muscles that are attached to it later and how they're distorted by the twisting of that bone. Okay, so we're just gonna come down here with this bone. And it kind of has this shape out here. And the reason why it's important to memorize this shape of the bone is because when you're drawing the elbow joint's a really important joint to get right, to make your figures, bring your figures to that next level. And one of the things that will make that difference is understanding, like when you see the arm from different angles, if you know how the bones look for this joint, then when you draw it from the left side, or you're looking at it from this view, or you're looking at it from the back view or the front view, or whatever angle you're viewing the arm as, you're gonna go, oh, that's right, this bone sticks out on the side, and you can actually see that bone kind of sticking out on that side, and then that will like help you go, oh yeah, right, okay, so now I got that, and then where's the actual elbow point, that little spike that sticks out? That's this part right here. This is the ulna, not the radius. It's the ulna that comes in and attaches here and gives us that protruding bone that sticks out that we often call the elbow. Now what I want to do here is I want to make sure I don't draw anything too big. So I just want to kind of draw a guideline mark here and a kind of thickness mark. This is just guidelines. So I know my bones are going to attach down here, and that's where my hand's going to be. And on my hand is going to have a length to it, and just kind of draw that out like so. Then I can zoom back in and show you guys the details. I think it's important to do that because if not, you end up drawing things distorted or not the right way. This is the thinner, straighter bone. It comes down here and attaches. So knowing this kind of shape of the bone here is going to help when we start attaching, and this actually comes out even more than this. When we start attaching muscles and ligaments and stuff to the skeletal structure, and then when you start drawing the figure from different angles and stuff like that, and when you start going through some poses, you're going to see, now I get where and why and how to always draw that joint and how to make it look proper. Because now you understand these parts that stick out on the arm. All right, now when we draw the radius, remember radius is the one that rotates. So maybe that will help. All right, kind of has this S curve to it. And then it has this bigger, remember it gets big down here, and it has kind of a curve there where it attaches to these little bones down here. And I'm not going to get into details of those right now because it's too small of a drawing. But we'll know that we have our thumb in here. We'll have our fingers. The long part, the long bone here, remember that's the bone that is not seen. That's not part of your finger yet. This is still inside your hand. This is where the knuckles are, where you punch something. Just to kind of again, not getting very detailed yet with the hands because I'm going to save that for when we actually master the hands and draw the hands. I know a question I get often is how do you get your Cintiq to look so much like a pencil? And really, it's a matter of drawing with my pencil brush. So if you have my brushes, it's this brush here, and it's set to have, if you go to the properties of that brush, you'll notice that it has noise checked. That's really the secret. Other than that, it just has shape dynamics set to pen pressure and transfer set to pen pressure. Everything else is standard. It's just a standard hard brush. You can see here the brush tip is the spacing is 12 standard. Everything is standard. So that's all I did was check noise on it and had those two set to pen pressure. And then it's just a matter of drawing at a small enough size so that you can get close like this and really draw with it. I don't recommend drawing with it for larger images. It would just take way too long. You might be able to get away with a 5 for larger images, but it doesn't look as much like a pencil. All right, so I want to make sure I got to zoom out, make sure I didn't make anything too big. You'll notice that what I did with this skeleton is I made that whole bone a little bit smaller, and I also made the scapulas actually stick down a little too far. Or hold on a second. No, that's more correct. So I do apologize. This here is not correct. So the scapulas don't actually extend down that far. Let's go ahead and make them not extend down that far. If you've already memorized them like that, it's not too big of a deal. It's just an easy correction to make to your brain. I do apologize if you've already memorized them at the wrong length like that. But we weren't really going into the scapulas. Yeah, I was just kind of showing generally where they were, so hopefully you didn't memorize that. But anyway, there we go. You notice that this bone here is a little bigger, and that's not the case from the front or back view. So what I need to do, remember this bone that's sticking out is the same as this bone here. It's opposite because we're flipped around. What I need to do is, I didn't mean to actually draw it bigger like that. I should just redraw it all, to be honest. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to try to scale it down, but to where it still fits right here. Again, that's the problem for me. It's the problem of zooming in before I have everything properly laid out. When I'm zoomed out, I should have everything, the sizes properly laid out from a zoomed out point of view, and then zoom in. So let's see here if I can kind of hopefully I'm making this smaller this time. Let's see if it's around the same size over there. That's pretty close. Right, okay, so now we have this next part. So what I want you to memorize now is this whole structure here. The reason why there's no reason to break it down like that, last time we broke it down, we learned this bone, then we learned these bones, then we learned this. The reason why I'm just doing it all in one thing now is because you kind of already know these shapes pretty much. The shapes don't change much. You're adding very little information here. The information you're adding is that from the front, it kind of has this little shape here. From the back, it's like this. The shadow would be right about here, a little bit of shadow here, but otherwise the shape is pretty much the same. And then the other difference is you have this part, obviously, this is reversed, but then you have this part of the bone here that comes up, and that's pretty much all that changes. Not a whole lot changes there. One thing to definitely take note of is whether you're viewing the skeleton from the front or the back, the radius, the S-curve bone here in the forearm, is on the outside no matter what. So it's always on the outside of the body. It's never on the inside unless you twist the arm around. I think that's an important thing to memorize, or to at least take a note of. Another thing is that we generally call this whole thing the arm, But I guess in medical terms, that it's not the whole thing is not the arm. You have your forearm and you have your arm. So anyway, this is a minor point. It's not important to drawing. Another thing I noticed is I drew the bones a little thick on this side than compared to here. And so I can either make these bones thicker, but truly this is more of the real size. And again, that's from zooming in. It's what happens. See if I can fix this without having to redraw it. I'm having to redraw it, but let's see if I can pull this off. For the most part, it seemed to work. I really want to make sure I get this elbow in here, what we call the elbow. Get that big notch that overlaps. Right, okay. Again, it's important to draw from the right side without looking at the left side. It's important to just be able to draw from the right side and feel natural drawing from the right side. And if that takes going through the exact same exercises, you probably won't have to draw as many times because it's pretty similar. But it might take a few times of drawing it blindly, that is without looking at this, before you can draw it comfortably. And I think that's important to be able to do that. Right, so let's go ahead and get started then. I'm going to kind of make sure I have the basic shapes down right this time. I don't want anything to be too big, so I'm going to kind of keep it in this size range. And when I come down here, I want to make sure that my thickness is a lot thinner. That way I don't make my bones too big. And I'm just going to kind of do a very simple, the thumb's kind of foreshortened and going away from us anyway, that thumb bone there. And for now, I'm just going to just keep this very simple because there's no reason right now to draw all this because we're not getting into the hands yet. So I think just a simple gesture of the hand like that will work. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and start adding the details of this bone. So it kind of comes out here and kind of comes out. I don't want to make it too big. Again, it's an easy mistake to make when you're zoomed in like this to make everything too big. Make sure I'm keeping this thin. I'm going to kind of lighten this up here a little bit. I don't know what eraser I have, so I want to go to this eraser so it doesn't like totally erase everything. Okay. Again, I don't want to go too big here, so remember they face on the inside. If the thumb's on the outside, on the opposite side, the bigger part is on the inside here, when the thumb's on the outside. So they're opposite. Just keep that in mind. Okay, just make sure I'm trying to make sure I keep the sizes right because I don't want to get too big. I want to have to redraw again. So on the inside right now, since the thumb's on the outside, then on the inside, on the opposite side, you have that straight ulna bone. It gets bigger at the end here a little bit. Kind of tapers here. There's a little tiny little bone here as well. And then you have, well, at least a little segment of the bone. Then we'll get into the radius. And again, the radius has this S curve where it kind of comes in here. Kind of comes like that, leaving a little bit of a gap there. Gets thicker at the end. And then we'll add just a little bit of shading. Remember, it gets bigger at the bottom. And I want to kind of fix up the shape of this bone just a little bit. looks, it doesn't have much dynamicness to it. It's kind of right. Okay, so now again the same thing. Draw this without looking at this. Make sure you have something covering that piece of paper or another layer with color on it so you can't see it. And go ahead and draw this bone a few times, the whole entire thing, not just the not just this bone, but do the whole entire thing here with the simple gesture of the hands until you can draw that from your memory quite well. I want to make sure you can like see this gap here between the bones. Right, so now you're feeling pretty confident. You've done the exercises. You're moving along quite well. You're feeling confident in your skeletal drawing. And now go ahead and try to draw a figure standing in front of you. And draw everything. Draw all the skin and everything. Even though you might not know a whole lot about the muscles and all that yet, that's fine. Hey, if all you've gone over is my Master Human Figure course, which doesn't go into really great detail about anatomy, which is why I'm making this course, go ahead and draw a front view like this, but draw your knowledge of the skeleton first and keep all that knowledge in mind. And then begin to draw your character over this, the knowledge you have, with the best knowledge you have of anatomy, and start pulling out all the muscles and stuff in over this, and then color it in everything. And notice that you're gonna hopefully what you're gonna notice is this new knowledge of the skeletal structure. It's gonna help you see, that's why this pokes out here, and that's why you have that. Oh, that's why you have this little bone right here that sticks out sometimes, in like females especially. You have that little bone that kind of sticks out from that front view. You're like, because you have the clavicle coming here, and it's where it's connecting to the scapula. It makes this little knot right here, and sometimes you can see that bone protruding out of their shoulder. And this is why sometimes you can see this knot over here on their arm and this knot on the inside. And oh, wait a minute, this might be why you can see this dip right here, because all the tissues are kind of sinking in here, and you have your bicep where it's attaching, then you have this like little dip here, and then you have your forearm muscles and so forth. And it's going to help you understand certain things better about the figure, especially the knee. Like, there's a kneecap there. This part, the patella, I believe it is, it moves around and it's loose, and it's connected by loose ligaments and stuff and loose tissue. And so, okay, now I have this protruding point here, this protruding point here. There's two protruding points. So if I view the inside or even the outside of the knee from the side view, I'm going to get those protruding points. And we're going to go through cool little landmarks and stuff throughout this course. All right, but that's a little side thing. It's just something you can test and see that just right now it should already start making a difference. The skeletal structure is important, and it's not something you want to skip. All right, so the next part we're going to get into is the femur bones. And again, we'll do the same thing where we draw them from the left and from the right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lay out the general size here. I don't want to go too big, so I'm just going to kind of put in some basic shapes there, kind of square shapes, so that I have the basic size of my knee joint. And again, there's not a whole lot to memorize here. So kind of draw these shapes coming down here for that bone. And then this outside bone here. And the back side. We'll get down here to the heel and stuff in just a bit. Mainly, I just want to make sure I don't get too big with this these bones. Okay, shaping some of this up so I can start drawing it. Right, so the bone doesn't look much different from the back than it does from the front. So there's not a whole lot to memorize here. And you should be able to fly through this rather quickly because you already have all this memorized because you have been doing the lessons, right? There's a little notch here on this side. When you view it from the back, it's very tiny, not that big. This little lip that kind of comes up, and it kind of comes in front of that part of the bone, and there's a little shadow here because there's a ridge there. And some of these ridges are important for later on, where ligaments and muscles attach. Kind of has the same shape as it did from the front view, so that doesn't change. And it comes down, it's thin, then it gets thicker at the end. And so here the kneecap from the, or the knee from the back is going to look a little different because it doesn't have the patella. Right, kind of has that shape to it like this. Just want to show where that attaches inside of there. Next you have the bottom part here. We're going to do the whole leg just like we did the whole arm because we already have pretty much it memorized, and it doesn't change much. And because it doesn't change much. Let's go ahead and shade in just a little bit. Keep in mind also that these have form to them like this, where it's kind of like I said before, like two soda cans on top of, stacked on top of each other. So you have this bottom soda can, it's like this, and you have one that's right above it, like that, right? So that it's overlapping. So and that's kind of how this is, and it's important, I think, to memorize that it has form to it. Everything we're drawing has form to it. And I just messed all that up, so I gotta go fix it. All right. Where this bone comes down here, the tibia, this starts attaching to what we're gonna, we kind of know as the Achilles heel and so forth, and that's what, there'll also be ligaments and stuff there, which is really what the Achilles heel is a ligament, but we'll get into that. For now, we're just dealing with the bone. Then there's another bone here, which starts to make up the heel, and then finally we have this larger bone part of the foot, which comes out, kind of has a box shape in the back there, kind of goes like this. Right, then we have the fibula, and it comes down here, and then kind of connects to the side, and we'll just draw it like this. And you might be able to see a little bit of the front of the foot coming out that way. We'll just kind of hint at it like this. There's no reason to draw any of the details now, because we'll get into feet later. So as you can see from the back side, the person looks shorter because their feet are moving away from us in perspective, whereas here they kind of come at us more, and then this foot was facing straight down. What I might do with this foot here is showing it, have it coming down like that, and showing the muscle, or not the muscle, but showing the bones, like how they kind of look. Now, forget that, because there's really no point. We're going to get more detailed into the foot, and we'll learn all that. So I don't I want it to be repetitive, so we'll just go ahead and get on to the next bones here, the right side. So go ahead and do the exercise for the left side. You should know what the exercises are now. Obviously, you're drawing along with me, so you already drew all this. Now go ahead and draw it about 5 more times, and then out from reference, whether it be a medical book or whatever it is, or from from the video, and then draw it from memory. Go back and forth until you feel comfortable drawing it from memory, and then we'll move on here to the right side. So I just want to make sure that all this here is kind of balanced for me as far as the overall shape it's going to have. Notice right now I'm sketching. I'm not lifting my pen off the tablet. I think it's a really good technique to learn. and I believe it will make you better at drawing and have smoother lines. And then when I want to make something that's, if I want to go from one place to the other, I just lightly touch to where you can barely see the line or any line at all. All right, so now let's go ahead and get some more details with this bone. And it kind of comes kind of like this because it's attached in there. And it comes off. There's a little bit of a lip here like we learned on the other side. A little bit of a point. There's a little notch like this. Should be smaller. And I'm going to pull that notch down a little bit because that notch should be down here because it should kind of have an angle more like this where it's thicker, it's shorter and thicker, so it kind of goes like that if you want to go extreme with it. Try to show a little notch there. I'm going to pull my lines for the bone as it comes down here. And sometimes what you can see, let's go ahead and kind of erase a lot of this. This almost kind of looks like a toe or a dinosaur toe or something. Sometimes you can kind of see this little part here, little ridge there. And that kind of comes down and finishes its shape. Kind of comes up and just uses shadow like that. Depends where the light's coming from. On this side, you have that same I kind of hinted at over there. Next, you have the part that comes down here to the tibia. The tibia kind of comes down, has this shape here. Then it kind of comes to the second bone that kind of has a curve to it. And finally, it kind of comes down here to the heel. And the heel has this kind of squarish shape. The fibula, you can kind of see part of it here. And it's important to know that you have this, you have this, and you have this here. It kind of makes a triangle, and you can only see that triangle from the side view, but it's an important landmark to memorize because when you're drawing the knees from the side view, you can make them look more realistic by just adding those landmarks, even if you're drawing a cartoon figure, like a comic-y type figure, not like really, really cartoony, because then it's totally simplified. Mickey Mouse has, tubes for legs, so. Then you have the front of the foot, and we'll just kind of hint at where it kind of fits in there. Maybe we'll see a little bit of that too, anyway. Right, so now you want to do the same exercises and draw this from, you already drew it, along with the video. Now go ahead and draw it from reference a few times and then draw it from memory. And it should be easy to get these bones down because you already have the front memorized. And the back doesn't look all that much different. And so you should be able to memorize it quite quickly. In fact, this whole back side of the skeleton shouldn't take you nearly as long to memorize and draw from your memory as it did the front view. One thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to kind of fix up the width of his rib cage. Even though it does, it does come down, and the front kind of comes up like this, and the back it's more like this. It still should be thinner, I think, here to make it look, to match what I have drawn on the other. Either that has to get thicker or this has to get thinner, I believe. Let's kind of get rid of some of these lines here. Yeah, see, I made that one still too far out. Okay, that's a little better. And if you want to, you can do like I did. You can pick like a lighter color and come in here on another layer and kind of color in underneath it, just to kind of add that bony color. So if you want to do that, you can. I'll go ahead and pause while I do that. And we want to kind of, what we're doing is we're kind of inventing something. If you've never saw a human being, for example, you want to try to build this neural network up in your brain. And you kind of do that by going through this kind of invention process where we're memorizing things as if they're separate objects and how they relate together as the whole. And so far we can draw the skeleton from the front and the back. Now remember the information that we learned and applied with the female. We'll go ahead and apply that really quickly for the back view as well. From the back view, not much changes about the female. The main thing that changed about the female from the back view is the hips. They kind of have more of a shape like this. So you kind of have the, let's see, make sure I go the right layer, right color, and right pencil. Right, so they're going to have this kind of same shape as the male. The main difference here is this ridge is going to kind of come in. Right, so here's like this. It's going to kind of come down. It's going to kind of have more of a shape like this. So more of a bowl shape, just like, it's more of a shape like this. So it kind of has that same kind of more bowl shape. Comes in, then comes down, and that's the basic shape of it. Right. So that's the main thing. No reason for me to really draw the whole thing, so we already have the front view of it. And that's all that changes is the basic shape of it like that. The next thing is the same as what we learned in the front, is the rib cage is thinner. And so just go ahead and make the rib cage thinner. Basically, you kind of take that same rib cage shape, and it's going to be still the same white out here, but it's going to come thinner this way. So that's the main shape that changes from the backside. All the bones could be a little bit smaller and a little bit thinner on a female. It just depends. Some females are big boned, some aren't. But yeah, so other than that, there's really nothing else to memorize. It's this front view of the hip that's most important. And the back view of the hip looks very much like the male, except it comes in here more. It's kind of shaped more like this, more of a square shape here, and then kind of comes out like that. So other than that, it's pretty much the same. So there's no reason for us to draw the entire female skeleton because it's not that much different. Just memorize the differences and you're good to go. Right, so there you go. Now you can draw a female skeleton from the front view and from the back view. The next thing we're going to get to, it will be the side view.